There we go. Great. Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Julia Reed. I am the project manager for the State of Innovation Challenge, and I'm really excited to welcome you today to our conversation with veteran wildland firefighter Jason Ramos. If you have questions for Jason, go ahead and put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll kind of get to those throughout the challenge. This is all part of the State of Innovation Challenge project. And especially if you are working on case number 3, our communities after COVID-19, and you're thinking about the challenge case question on how to design communities to lower the risk to people, homes, and businesses that they face from wildfires, this is a great one for you. And if you're just interested in wildland firefighting, in smoke jumping, in careers, in serving others, this is a great opportunity for you to kind of explore that too. And we're so excited to be joined by Jason, who literally wrote the book on smoke jumping, and where he's the author of Smokejumper. And we're really excited to be here. So thanks for being with us, Jason. Oh, I gotta unmute you. There we go. Hold on one. There we go.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a huge honor.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. Because you're not just a firefighter, you're a smoke jumper. And what is that? And what do you do? What do you do? What does that title mean?
Well, so I got hurt back in 2013, but I'm still assigned to the smoke jumper base. So basically, smoke jumpers are, the fire service, think of it as a big toolbox, right? You have different firefighters for different things. You have your local fire stations down by your home, right? Those are called type 1 fire engines. You have small little like Ford trucks. Those are usually squads. You have big long trucks you see on the highway with big ladders. Those are actually called truck companies. And then you have the aviation part of firefighters, and they're very small. So since 1939 to date in the smoke jumper program, we're still under 6,000 of folks that have passed to become a smoke jumper. So in the aviation part of the fire service throughout the nation, the United States, you have helicopters, you have smoke jumpers, and that's what makes up that arena. So think of it as, you can think of it kind of like the military of the Air Force. You have the Marines, you have the Army. So the Air Force part of it would be helicopter type firefighters, and then smoke jumpers. And what smoke jumpers are, they're again very unique, less than 450 during the summertime, and they insert anywhere in the nation via parachute. And most of those are going to be small lightning fires, but we can also, the jumpers can also respond to larger fires to help out folks. We call it kind of a force multiplier. So let's say someone didn't have as much training and this fire decided to get bigger on whoever that incident commander was on this fire, whether it be in Montana, New Mexico, California. They can call a load of smoke jumpers, which means a plane full, 8 to 12, 14 smoke jumpers, depending on the size of the plane. And these jumpers will get on station, or get on scene, as we call it. They'll parachute out and would come and meet you. Say you were the incident commander, and we'd say, how are you? A handshake, these kind of days, right? Social distancing, but we would say, what are your needs? Yes, elbow bump, right? What are your needs? And we will go to work for you. We can give you food. We can give you, we have folks that are highly trained in medical. If someone got hurt, we can take over the fire if you would like, as the incident commander. So we're kind of problem solvers, but our main forte is small lightning fires, put them out before you see it on national news. That's kind of what smoke jumpers were designed for back in 1939.
Yeah, and a lot of people I didn't know this until recently, but part of the inspiration for State of Innovation Challenge is that so many cool industries and ideas and services have been invented in Washington State. And I didn't realize that Washington is home to one of the first places, one of the first smoke jumping bases in Winthrop, right?
Yes, this is ground zero, the birthplace. So 1939 is where these folks came, and they wanted to show the foresters. And there's some famous quotes out there, from regional foresters that basically said we're crazy, right? We're a little bit unbalanced, who would embark and coming out of a plane, right? And you kind of look back and said, yeah, maybe we're a little bit imbalanced somewhere here and there, right? What would you jump out of as people say, a good airplane. I said, well, you never seen airplanes, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes.
but yes, this is the birthplace. So even dating back to World War II, all the airborne units that went to Europe on the night of June 5th, 1944 was from basically this idea. So a lot of history. Apollo 14 was a smoke jumper. We have Special Forces Medal of Honor recipients that were smoke jumpers. So some pretty big resumes in less than that 6,000 folks that have passed. So honored definitely to be one, right? I always talk as I was not one, but it's you kind of forget, makes you very humble.
That's awesome. How did you get involved in this? How did you come to firefighting and to smoke jumping specifically?
Well, I started so in Riverside County, California, which we call Region 5. All the states are broken up into regions. They had one of the largest volunteer fire programs, right? So at the age of 17, your parents could sign for your parents' consignment, and you could go and train and do the same thing as a paid firefighter. There was no difference. And I remember being in high school and coming home on the bus and seeing some of my punk rocker friends, right? And I seen them at a car fire. It's like, back then, right? They had shows like 21 Jump Street. You're like, what the heck's going? Those are firefighters. Those guys go to my school. I didn't understand it, right? And I remember going back to school and hunting them down. Said, I don't get it. You're a firefighter? I seen you. I said, yeah, been a firefighter for a couple of years, because he was, a little bit older than me. And he asked how old I was, said, you can't do anything until you're 17. So, right, literally when I turned 17, my dad took me down to the local fire station. And the first thing you do is introduce yourself and you get an application. You take it home, and that's kind of your background application. And you wait and you call and you get a call and then you show up. So that's how that all started. And then when I became a firefighter, I was responding September of 1989. That's when I finished all my testing. So I was responding to 911 calls. I mean, you
Wow.
name it. At 17, right? It was kind of a interesting thing to be, so young. You look back and now and say, wow, I was a kid. And then I kept progressing. What I liked, what I didn't like, right, in the fire service, that I want to be. And then, aviation is like, you see these guys, you go to fire and you see helicopters coming in planes, like, what are those guys? And that's kind of sparked it off. So years later, in 1999, that's when my application was accepted to go to rookie training to become a smoke jumper. There's no guarantees. They just invite you. And if you pass, you have an opportunity to become a smoke jumper. So I was very lucky to pass. But between 1989 and 1999, a lot of hard work
Yeah.
as a fire. So from county, riding on the back of tailboard engines, as you see in old movies, I got to do that because that was getting phased out. So I spent 2 years riding on the tailboard, which is pretty interesting going down the highway, right? The engine hits a bump. You kind of got to react with that bump because you're on the back of a fire engine. So,
Hold on.
yeah, hold on. And you got a strap on you, but still there's many times you're in the air, right? I only weighed 120 something pounds, right? It's like, and they always tell you, if something goes wrong, you hit this horn, right? The horn goes to the engineer. And I'm always hitting that horn. Slow down, go for you. So it was a joke most of the times, but that's kind of how that all started. So I started at 17 at a very young age in the fire service and got the taste of a little bit of everything, and chose to go more wildland firefighting versus structural city county firefighting.
And tell me a little bit more about that. Why wildland firefighting?
When I was, again, very young, right, I was you get to go to all different fires, right? Structure fires, home fires, and car fires, and accidents, and a cat in a tree, all these, right? We call 911, that's where we go to. And then the summer came, right? And you have wildland fires. Like, whoa, who are those folks? Because now you start to work with Forest Service agencies and all these different agencies, and you see these guys with, right, big mustaches and different hairdos and different uniforms. And, you were like, whoa, who are those guys? Right? Because at our station, you got to have a badge and you're polishing your shoes and your haircut. And it's like, who are these? It's a whole different group.
Mhm.
And I looked at him as more, it was just a very odd, another piece, right? It's like a different team, and I got to one fire at a very young age. Again, I got to go with an engine. They asked for a firefighter, and my engineer said, yeah, you can have her, have the kid. And I stayed with them all night into the wee hours of the morning. And it's like, whoa, these guys, like, they make their own decision, they're making their own decisions, a little bit different structure. And then I got into heliTAC, which is helicopters. And then you see your first smoke jumper, right? And I remember staring at the first smoke jumper I got to meet on a fire, and I watched how he tied his shoelaces, how he ate his food, everything was so different.
Mm.
And they were very, you looked up to them. They were mentors, right? They were never late. They were very well spoken. They were leaders. You didn't even know this guy, but you wanted to follow him. It's like, I'll go anywhere with you, right? I mean,
Even out of a plane.
they were just, yeah. And you just, again, you watch these folks and how they operate, and right at a very young age, it's like, I want some of that. That's where I want to go.
Yeah.
And it took me years. You got to remember, I was 125 pounds. There's a weight limit, height limit. And, most of the jumpers looked at me and said, how's this kid going to pack 120, 30 pound pack when it's more than him? And, my training, being 5'6", just making the weight limit, jumpers that come in the program, whether it be female or males, if you're 5'6" or just a little bit under, and you're not, your weight's just at the limit, you're going to have to work harder. I'm sorry, a guy that's 5'9" or a lady that's 5'9", and their walking gait's almost twice as yours, and they're 200 pounds, they can pick up more weight. It's mathematics, physics, right? So you work your butt off. You have to really work for it. And I did. And it's a huge reward to be part of a very small, unique group, and to be honored to write a book. HarperCollins called me. I didn't write a book and go look for a publisher. So it was like, huh? You want me to do what? So that's kind of how it all started. When I seen that first jumper, I wanted that. It took me years to train for it. And a lot of my friends that were ex-jumpers, they were honest with me, like, gee, I don't think this is for you. I'll be honest with you. It's like, why? I don't think you can pack 110 or 20, 30 pound pack. Show me.
Yeah.
So yes, right. And my dad always taught me a challenge. My dad always says, no such word as can't, son. What do you mean? Get out there and do it. So I remembered packing my first pack at 110 pound, which is the test. I couldn't even get off the ground.
Yeah.
Literally. And my dad's looking at me, I remember the look on his face, right? He wants to help you, but it's like, let my son, and I couldn't get off the ground.
Yeah.
Right? And you go into rooms like, how did these guys get, right? There was no YouTube. There was no book how to be a smoke jumper. There was nothing. They wanted you to figure it out. So I figured it out. I showed up and I passed. So
that's awesome. Well, that's a good segue into kind of our next question. So I know you mentioned that you've been injured, so I think your job's probably changed a little bit, but what does a typical day look like for someone who's doing wildland firefighting, like during fire season? What does that look like?
For me, so a typical smoke jumper, they come to work. First thing we do is roll call, just like in school. It's pretty interesting. So we're a national resource. So let's say we had a bunch of lightning fires in Washington State. If you were at our base in August, you could have literally all other 8 bases at one base. You could have 100, 150 smoke jumpers there. And roll call is pretty interesting, right? There's names that people can't pronounce. There's different haircuts, different hairdos, different people. They say different things. They say good morning here. They say it in different language, right? It makes the mornings kind of breaking the ice in the morning. So, and what roll call is basically when you call off that person's last name, when they say here, good morning, or good morning in another language, that means they're ready to go.
Yeah.
That means that's what that means. They're ready to go on the list. If that person says off the list, I'm hurt, not feeling good, that name gets pulled to the side. Next person comes up. So after roll call, they'll set the load. So the first 8, depending on the plane, or 10 or 12, if the siren goes off for a call, those folks know that they need to be on the plane in a few minutes. They need to be in their gear in 2 minutes, board the plane, and be off the ground in about 10 minutes. So it doesn't matter where you're at that day. You could be at the base for 8 or 16 hours a day. Siren goes off, you know from roll call, you're on the load. For the other jumpers, even the jumpers on the load, we're doing sewing projects. They're fixing parachutes. They're doing research and design, making jumpsuits. I do a lot of the research and design at our base. So I get to play with all these crazy textiles. We're talking superhero textiles, textiles that glow red when you put heat to them. Nothing even phases it. The padding, the protection, the helmets, all these different things in R&D, and other jumpers do as well. Producing gear, training. We give tours. Before obviously the COVID, we were about 2,000 to 4,000 guests in less than 6 months that would come to the base. We can show you around the base. We still do that. Not right now, obviously, but that's kind of a typical day. We do our thing anyone else does in the job. We're just waiting for something to go wrong. That's kind of what a smoke jumper does. We wait for something that's wrong, a fire somewhere in the United States.
And then when something goes wrong, it's up in the plane and out you go, and then what happens?
Correct. So like I said, they'll be on our base is very proud for that, to be off the ground in about under 10 minutes. I've timed folks get off the ground in 8 minutes. That's very fast. If you've ever flown international, going to SeaTac or whatnot, how long does it take just to go to customs? So
Longer than
you can imagine that's it. You can imagine getting all that gear on right in about 2 minutes, board the plane, and they're off the ground. So that plane's going to head to that incident, whoever called us, right? It could be in Washington State. It could be in Oregon. It could be in Idaho, Montana. Once they get on station, meaning above the fire, they're either going to see smoke or not see smoke. They'll circle. If there's no smoke, they're going to look for it. Sometimes we come back home. We didn't find anything. But most of the time, they'll see smoke. They'll contact whoever requested us, because we're a national resource. So they're going to talk to whatever agency, district called us to this incident. We'll tell them we're on scene. They're going to give them a size up. It could be we have a 1/4 acre fire, no hazards at risk, or there's homes at risk. They're going to give a size up so that dispatch then will say, yes, we want you to take action on the fire. Or let's say the fire was in a wilderness area. They're going to let Mother Nature do her job. So it all happens very quickly. And then once they say take action, we're going to do a couple little things. We're going to throw wind indicators to see where the wind's at and how we're going to land. And they'll have jumpers out of that plane pretty quick. I mean, very quick. And then from there, those jumpers will get down on the ground, take all the gear off, switch out some gear, and go take action on that fire, cutting fire line or monitoring the fire or whatever they need to do to put that fire out.
Can you explain a little bit more what cutting fire line means for folks that are familiar?
Sure. So cutting fire line, basically any firefighter, whether hot shots, the firefighters you see on the news, national news, we're going to use tools, things like the Pulaski, which was designed after the 1910 fires by the name of a gentleman, Edward Pulaski. We're going to use chainsaws. We have a bunch of other very specialized tools that we use depending on the state, right? The topography. Like Florida uses different tools than we use in Washington. Alaska uses different tools because of the tundra than we use here in Washington. So we'll go out, and basically what we're doing is we're going to take the food away from the fire. We know fire is a chemical reaction, right? Fuel, heat, and oxygen. But I always like to give this little riddle, folks, as human being, right? We need oxygen to breathe. We need to be warm to live, right? And we need food. If you take any one of those things away from us, we also will perish. So fire does the same thing. So once we take the food away, or if we cool it, the fire goes out. So when we're out there, what we call digging line for 16 hours or 10 hours or 8 hours, we're going to make a small little fire line, just like you did with your parents on a campfire or in a summer camp. We're going to make a fire line around that fire to help contain it and then start to put it out.
Awesome. And I think when you were talking about the packs too, it's like you have to carry, if you're parachuting into a fire, not just everything that you need for the fire, but it sounds like you have to carry your food and other equipment. Like what goes into your pack?
So yeah, so think of the plane as a shopping cart, right? So you always go to the store and we put the food in the shopping cart. So the plane has all our food and supplies, chainsaws, hand tools, extra water, all these specialized equipment that we need. When we jump by the plane, we have our pack that we basically our home that lives on the front of us and that goes on our back once we land on the ground. And that's going to carry some of our water, food, compass, GPS, some of our technology that we carry, paperwork, first aid products, gear, cold weather gear, whatever you need. That's your what we call PG bag, your personal gear bag. Now, once we get on the ground, the plane is going to drop us anywhere our food and supplies, which is going to last us around 48 hours. So those jumpers that jump out, they have about 48 hours worth of food. And sometimes if they're really deep in the wilderness and bad weather comes, they might have to stretch that out, or they might have to go look for some other substitutions. So huckleberries, strawberries, wild berries, blueberries, thimbleberries, fish, you name it. There's other food out there that you might have to find.
Wow, so you're fighting fires, living off the land, a lot going on.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen much, but I definitely learned, the time I jumped from 99 to 2013, seeing some of the older jumpers, right? You see from experience what they're doing. And I remember guys would, fill their water canteens, 1 quart canteens with huckleberries. Like, what are you doing? And it's like caching food.
Yeah.
The size of the fire. Do you see the size, how much food you got? You see the weather, right? They already know experience, right? Because that means they're gonna run out of food.
Yeah.
So you learn very quickly. So there was times when I jumped places, if you jumped in a thing of huckleberries, and this is again, if the fire's not out of control, right? Or you come back to that area. We're not doing this first, but oh, this is a good place to get thimbleberries or huckleberries, or there's a good place for fish. Just seen a bunch of grouse over there or something, especially in Alaska. So you eat very well, but like I said, your situation awareness has to stay up, because if bad weather comes in, you might not have food for a few days.
Yeah. And how do you get out of there? Like, does the plane come and pick you up? Like, do you hike out? What happens when you finish the job? How do you get home?
It's a good question. So most of the time, your feet is what's going to get you home. So you're going to walk. That's the bummer part, right? Of being an aerial delivered firefighter, you got to walk. If you're lucky, you can get a helicopter to come pick you up, but that's usually not the case. In my time spent as a jumper, one of my walks was a little over 13 and a half hours. Some jumpers have had a couple days walk out, pack outs. So it just depends where you're going, where you're at. Sometimes when it's really busy, we don't have the resources to come get us, so we're going to walk. So you could be a 2-hour walk, 3-hour walk, 8-hour walk. You got to know how to navigate, not get hurt, right? There's all these pieces of the puzzle out there. And when you become a jumper, like the fire is the easy part, right? You got to get out the plane in one piece, parachute opens, land, hopefully be in one. Yeah, the fire. And I remember one of the trainers saying, you came here as a hot shot or a helitack person, or, you're on an engine crew. The fire now is the easiest part of your career as a smoke jumper. And you're like, what? The easy part. But then you learn like, oh yeah, right? You got to put 110 pound or 120, 30, 40 pounds and then walk for miles and not get hurt. So
yeah. There's no Google Maps telling you no either.
No, I've had many fires where the compass didn't work, radio didn't work, and GPS didn't work. And that is, jumpers would say that's a good day, right? And some, kind of Hollywood, but it's true. It's like you're trained to now it's the real deal. And I've had it where compass was not working, radio and GPS, which was pretty interesting. You go back to training and you get out. So
yeah, talk about state of innovation. You really got to innovate your way out of that problem.
It is, right? I remember I'd always go back to my old supervisor. He would whistle when things got really interesting. He would just have this little hum whistle he would do, cutting line for hours in triple digit temperatures. And this guy would just whistle. And I would remember that, just whistle. And it's like, hey, you're out in the woods, right? Things would be a lot worse. I got food, I got water, I'm in one piece. All right. So a little bit different mindset.
Thinking about this summer, so the kind of tagline for this whole project is that, 2020 had a lot of problems. And we think that young people in Washington State have solutions and ideas that they can contribute to help us solve some of these 2020 problems, which are going to roll right into 2021. But it was a pretty intense, it wasn't just pandemic problems, it was pretty intense fire season too. We had a lot of fires. I know we were really impacted by it in Washington State, by the air quality and the smoke, and a lot of communities were lost and kind of impacted. So what was this summer like for you and your colleagues and other firefighters that you know? Was it like trying to contain fires while also dealing with a pandemic?
It was very interesting. You know, my guys have been around. I've been in the fire service for going on 32 years, and most of my friends now are chiefs or just retiring, or we call high brass, smoke jumpers, superintendents, captains, supervisors, and to hear their tone, right, with the pandemic and things are real, when things are starting to happen, as the months went by and people were getting sick, and maybe someone they knew, got sick and didn't come home.
Mm-hmm.
Things got a little bit weird. Talking to a few of my friends, you can hear it in their voice. It's like, I remember one firefighter saying, he was a jumper, now worked for a city fire department. He said, Jay, we go to work, we know might not come home, but it's like times two now. We go to work, might not come home, but we got this other thing on our back that we can't fight.
Yeah.
So it's like, it gives you goosebumps. You're like, whew. So, when you get off the phone with these folks, my buddies, hey man, hope to see you on the flip side, or hope to talk to you next week, or, and it was tough for some folks. You could hear it in their voice, right? The stress, the family, the other guys that would try to just ignore it, right? Just to try to just tune it out. And then it would hit them later on, and then they would tune it out again, right? We're good at doing that, right? You go to a bad accident or a bad house fire, a bad 911 call, we're able to kind of switch gears. Not all the time, but it's something we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting in the smoke jumper world, right? So since I was hurt, it was kind of interesting because I was put, kind of a funny name, sounds bad, but non-essential, right? So I was essential, but not to be at the base, because we didn't want, I could get someone sick, they thought, with everything going down and all the recommendations. So we want to make sure the pots weren't sick. Everyone was kind of doing their thing, right? So I was working from home, doing a lot of research and design, which was interesting because of my, again, 30 something years in the fire service, but most 20 years, right, working, doing other stuff. You got a lot of work done, right? There's no distractions. There's no, you're on the phone and everyone's doing the same thing. They're at home, and we've got a lot of big projects done for the gear the smoke jumpers are wearing, which is huge.
Yeah.
Making sure those guys are protected, and the gals and all those folks. So, and then doing search and rescue. I do search and rescue as well for the county. So that was always interesting to, I'm still a first responder, responding to these calls and how to be safe, and doing things that's recommended. And some days you don't know what to believe anymore, right? You're like, what are we doing? Do I wash my hands? Do I wash my feet? Do I wash my ears? Right? So I tell,
learn new things.
Yeah. So I always tell my dad would always say, wash your hands and wash your feet. So I remember before the COVID thing, right? I did just said it. And I would tell my buddies that. I remember one buddy says, we got to wash our feet too. So I said, no, man, it's just, but it was just.
For viewers watching,
humor.
We're not a main transmission area for COVID.
Yeah, exactly. And it was funny, but you can hear you can hear him pause, right? He's like, so when do I do it after a call? I said, no, man, I'm kidding with you. Right? It was, humor is always trying to lighten things up. And, some of my friends got sick, and some of my friends right now are dealing with it. Like, their family's sick and they're hanging in there. And they're first responders. I get a text to Jay, I'm out, whole family's out. I'm good. I got a text a few days ago. I'm good. We're hanging in there. I'll ping you hopefully next week. Right. And that's just how we operate. The hopefully means nothing bad happens. So pretty stressful for all, as you see on national news, and we're trying to do our best, just like everyone else.
Yeah,
We're trying to do
adds
our
a
best like everyone else.
adds a lot of stress to an already kind of stressful role for sure.
Yeah,
You
the time too. Yeah.
Yeah. You had mentioned a couple times now kind of the research and design, the R&D that you do, and also the sewing room at the fire station. I feel like those are not always things that people, if they're thinking about like, oh, firefighters or fighting fires, like they're not necessarily thinking about like the science that goes into it or the sewing. Can you talk a little bit about both the research and then what happens in the sewing room?
Yeah. So I mean, jumpers are they're the guys, right, mending their wives or girlfriends' purses or pants or jackets, right? So you will definitely learn that. Some guys are very good, and what I mean by guys and gals, we just refer them to guys. Um, you become very good or proficient. Some folks are not, but they can still fix something. Some folks are exceptional. Um,
And why is sewing important to being a smoke jumper?
so that's all our gear. So all the gear you see, whether you look at my book or YouTube, something, all that gear they're wearing is produced by us.
Oh wow.
We make it. Yeah. So all the materials come in big bolts. We have all the sewing machines. We have all the cutters, and it's pretty, how do you say, guerrilla tactics, right? We don't have big like Gerber machines that cut patterns out automatically. We're doing it by scissors and rotary saws. So some of our materials are actually used to cut them, or a rotary saw.
Wow.
You can't use scissors. It's made out of Kevlar and para aramids. They're very tough to cut. They're very, it's kind of like a soft armor, basically what it is, a soft armor suit, night suit. So the loft is where all that happens, all the sewing machines, all the, if you needed a snapper button fixed, if you needed when your fast tech buckles off your pack broke or anything, that's where it happens in the loft. You can go in there, or you can design something. You needed a wallet, or you needed your belt broke. Go to work, you make your belt. You had a rip in your pants, or your gears ripped. So that every smoke jumper base has a sewing loft, a parachute loft. Normal fire stations don't have it. Some fire stations might have a sewing machine in the back to fix some things, but as a smoke jumper, at some point in your career, you're probably going to sew something. Either it's going to be where you're assigned to, or to help with it, cutting out patterns and stuff like that.
That makes sense. And so then a lot of this research that you're doing is on different fabrics that are like heat proof or things that are flexible, lightweight that you guys can wear in the field.
Correct. It's I call it superhero stuff because I mean it's smart technology. You got smart textiles. You got textiles, padding that will react to when something impacts it very fast and very hard. But if you touch, it's very nice and supple. But as soon as you hit it with a hammer, it reacts. We have other textiles that will heat up. This is more in the structural area, but we might see it cross over. When it gets heat, it actually will kind of like, how can I say this? It'll look like you just got bit by a bunch of mosquitoes. All these little bumps will come up, and that'll give you airspace between the textile to keep you cool, right? So you have all these different textiles. We have textiles that are made out of carbon that literally, when you put flame to it, you'll see the fibers move around, but nothing's burning.
Wow.
They're kind of dancing around, they're turning red, but you take the flame away and nothing's wrong with it. You're like, what is that? Right? So there's some engineers out there, I call them mad scientists, that they're always making something better for the military or first responders. And that's kind of what I like to do, is dig into that arena and really bring that technology to the smoke jumper base, like our jumpsuits and our padding, our helmets, some of the best manufacturers that make packs. I will outsource with them, talk to the engineers, the CEOs, and get them to work with us, right? It's kind of like 007. We want the best of the best for our folks. We don't want the socks with the holes in it,
Yeah.
right? We want the socks that you can take, right, and hang off the side of a cliff if you need.
Yeah.
So that's what I kind of do. And every base will have a little bit of that. I think I take it a little bit more to the extreme because it's just a passion I have. So usually when people see like the car I'm sitting in, I can go to the trunk and pull stuff. I'm like, what is that? Well, let me show you. So I always have something that is very unique for what I'm doing. So yeah, smoke jumpers are uh, always on that cutting edge.
Awesome. Well, I want to ask you questions about a little bit about our challenge case now. So I mentioned earlier, there's 3 challenge cases that are part of the State of Innovation. One of them is about the food chain and food insecurity. One of them is about kind of responding to COVID-19 and mental health care and other issues related to the pandemic. And then one is about imagining our future after COVID and how can we build safer, more resilient, more environmentally sustainable communities in our state. And I know how fire has really impacted a lot of communities, especially as populations grow and rural places become more crowded, or now that more people are working from home, some people are choosing to move into more distant areas where the cost of living is lower and they can be closer to kind of wild spaces and that is good, but it also can put them closer to public lands, closer to forests, closer to places where fires happen. So we're asking students to think about how would they design a community that could be safer from wildfire risk. And so what are some things that you think about when you think about community safety and wildfires, or things that you wish people knew or took into account when they're kind of designing communities, or just when they're living near to fires or places where
Sure.
fire?
Yep. So it's a what you just asked is right, is the $1 million question, right? So we have states that burn every year like clockwork. Since I was a kid in Southern California, our known winds called the Santa Ana winds, you'll see on national news this time of year is their time to burn in Southern California. We know this. It's imminent. It happens. It's clockwork, right? And still, since I was a teenager, a kid, to date, we're still not fixing the problem. We're only scratching the surface of it. And I like to simplify stuff as a smoke jumper, right? Again, you have fuel, heat, and oxygen makes fire. You take the fuel away, you don't have fire. So in Southern California, I remember I worked for a season with fire goats. This is just one of the solutions that we're not using to our full potential. That you put 400 head of goats in an acre or two, in about a week, it's all gone. And you move those goats throughout the year. They'll take hillsides away and they eat the brush mitigation for the near homes. It's a great resource and we don't really use that to our potential. And there's still communities building in what I like to call the Santa Ana corridors. We know winds blow through there every year at 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. And why are we building homes right in the path? And if we are, why are we not having a structure of insurance where those folks, if you want to live there, you can live there, but you're going to pay this much, and we're not going to send firefighters there to risk their lives, which happens every year. Firefighters get hurt to try to protect it. I mean, that's what we're made to do, life and property. And most of the time when these fires, it's property and life. We take those challenges to save your property, and we're not doing it in some states. We're doing opposite. And what Mother Nature does is, if we don't take care of the brush and the fuel, she does it for us. And that's what she's doing. So these fires that are getting bigger, and in these areas where you see these homes and hundreds and thousands of homes, we're not doing some of these simple things that we can be doing. And I've been part of some of those solutions that I've taken upon to show folks, not just talk about it, right? Get a grant through a state. People say, oh, a grant takes too long to do, too much paperwork. Just took me a phone call. It's some work, and then they pay you.
It's amazing.
Right? Yeah, and now we have this great 20 acres that we did as an experiment to show folks we have, a less of a hazard of wildfire with this simple thing that we've been doing in the fire service that has been handed down for years and years that we do as a professional, we can pass off to any civilian. It's not that hard to do, and there's people out there you can actually hire to do it for you if you're not able to work and do those kind of arduous duties. So it always, coming from California again, as a firefighter working in a Santa Ana corridor area, we used to do pre-plans. You'd go out and meet the community and show them how to prepare their homes. And through the years, that's kind of went away in some places. And I'm kind of scratching my head. It's like, why, right? I'm at a level now where I can talk to these chiefs and captains and do some research, right? I have a pretty good toolbox and go, what happened to pre-plans? What happened to when all the people are trying to get out of this area? It's kind of like it's kind of like a tsunami zone, right? Or Hawaii, right? You live in a certain level area, volcano area. Your insurance is different, right? It's a known thing. Just like a tsunami warning, if you hear the sirens go off, there's routed signs where to go high ground. Why are we not doing that for certain areas for we know that are very high hazard for wildfire? We don't do it. And it really makes me get out there and do something about it. I make phone calls. That's how this kind of started, working with the state of Washington, is to show folks that I have a solution. It's not just I talk about it. It's like, here, these are things that we can do to educate our community. We can make you, you don't have to be a smoke jumper on a plane, but I can give you just as much knowledge as I can to folks to protect their families, their homes. Even like in Australia, right? They have their fire bunkers where they can actually go, they can defend their homes as much as they can. And then that fire station knows that those folks are safe. They have their fire bunker. They can go in, close the hatch. They can make a sandwich for their family or watch some TV, or elaborate fire bunker. And we've been able to mitigate that, right? Because they know it's imminent. They know it's going to happen. It's kind of like the rainy season. You know it's going to rain.
Yeah.
You have an umbrella. So that's what's interesting when I work at high level with, whether it be a senator or a governor or a mayor. It's like, this is fixable. It really is. And most of it's free. Like, you can call the local agency. They'll come and it's free. They're free. They'll tell you what to do. And sometimes even free for the labor. Sometimes they might even be able to do a prescribed burn in your area. You don't have to pay anything. So the education, I say, is the kind of the ground zero of it, is to get people inspired that you can make a difference. And I wish we were doing that more. And we're at a point now where these fires will be getting bigger.
Yeah.
That is a fact. They're going to get bigger. We have hotshot crews now that are doing literally 14 days on, 2 days off now, almost the entire season.
Wow.
Back in the 80s and 90s, that wasn't really, right? And that's, again, the homes. Our garden is getting so full, it needs to be cleaned out. It's kind of like carrots, right? You got to thin your carrots. Our trees, they need to be thin. We bring back logging and natural resources in our areas. We have to. We shouldn't be getting, right, lumber from somewhere across the ocean. We have our own stuff here that we could mitigate our garden. So, long answer to your question, but there is things that we could do here that work. And I've done them. Like, we've done them in communities.
Yeah.
So.
And I think some great suggestions in there for students who are doing the Case 3 project too, like thinking about fire bunkers, about having planning conversations, making sure everyone has a plan. I love the fire goats. That's a great solution, and also kind of a native species. And I think what I really take away when I hear from you is that, as much as firefighting sounds like it's such a mix of new technology, new ideas, but also some pretty old ideas like using goats and forest maintenance and other just kind of simple plans can be an important part of the firefighting process as well.
Correct. Yeah, we have literally machines now that take less man hours, less vehicles, right? There was machines out there that can take off a side of a hill and just thin it out. We're not taking the whole hill. We're thinning it out. That resources goes to us, right? Whether it be a logging company. There's that. And again, the fire goats. It was such an amazing thing. I always tell people, if you stand in one place long enough, they're going to eat your shoelaces. They're going to eat your pants. They're going to eat your shoes off. And they're so they like to play, but they do a great job. And I got to see where I lived, where I became a firefighter. Those hill, if you look at my book, those camera pages, but you see a horizon full of fire. That area is the same place. I believe it was around 10 years after that, that community hired the fire goats to come in to trim that down again. And they got rid of that fire threat.
Wow.
And it was right. The watershed was still fine. There wasn't no erosion. The herd, the company that managed those, the shepherds of that managed of how long to leave them in that area and whatnot. But it's to see, right, fire come through there, totally devastate it. The garden grew back very quick for the chaparral, and then they say, hey, we got to do something. The community paid. They got the boats come in, and they fixed it. So that area, still to this day, I saw firefighters down there that it has not burned. They're mitigating it. So it's like, well, that worked.
What about, I have a couple more questions for you, but I just want to throw out to remind folks that if you have questions you'd like us to ask Jason, you can go ahead and put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A. And we're happy to bring you into the conversation too. But I wanted to ask you, Jason, what about, well, two questions, I guess. One is when we talk about kind of using some of these older techniques, I've definitely seen in news articles and things, some fire companies also looking to local native practices of fire management or forest management, and kind of talking to indigenous tribes and other communities in the area. Do you see that much in your work, or have you heard about that from other people in your field?
As in, kind of define your question there. You're talking about our local reservations working with us, or?
Yeah, I guess like working with local reservations, and if there are any kind of traditional land management practices that folks are trying to bring into firefighting practice.
Correct. Yeah. So they have, we still have, we work hand in hand with, we call it the BAA, Bureau of Indian Affairs. We work hand in hand. I've worked, actually my rookie brother was Apache Indian, right? And I worked with Navajos down in Cal. Amazing, just to be part of, right? To their language and to work with these. Again, I was a young kid, right? It's like, wow. So yeah, there is different practices, right? And it doesn't matter, I say, across the borders, it doesn't matter who they are, if they understand it again. And it always comes back to that same analogy as the garden. You gotta take care of the garden, whether it's Indian reservation or in Australia, New Zealand, Mexico, right? We did the international program where I worked at, which is another big honor to be part of the Mexico international program, to get them up rappelling out of helicopters for their rainforests. And from what I've seen, right, so I was able to experience these different borders, and it all came down to one thing again, was we've got to manage our garden. It's overgrown, and if we're not allowed to do it, Mother Nature comes in and takes everything in one shot.
Yeah.
So during the years, we're still seeing, right, you get different management levels that come in, and I still think the problem is that education part. Some of these either high management folks are not seeing the picture. Like they've never seen a fire goat, or they've never did a FireWise grant. They never worked. It's like, no, it exists. I've done it. You just call this number. And I think the hardest thing is to get that information out there. But we do see folks, again, different states, different communities, that are really now, like, how do you say, really putting it's like your property, right? They're all joining forces saying, hey, these thousands of acres are ours. We got to take care of it. And they're doing it, but it's not everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And I wish California would just really start doing that. And even Washington, right? We're a little bit behind the curve too. Oregon has done stuff, Alaska, but we just need to to be commonplace. It
Yeah.
needs to be in schools. It needs to be taught, because if it's not taught, no one knows what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Well, one other question. I mean, first of all, it's so cool to hear you talk about working with Mexico and Australia. It definitely sounds like it's the kind of it's the kind of job that could take you to a lot of places.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
you have a lot of different experiences with this kind of work. Would you say that's true? That's a question we get a lot. Is like, can you do this job in lots of places?
Yes. So I was lucky. So the first female smoke jumper, and I never like to say right male or female, but Deanne Shulman, she was the first female smoke jumper, and she was a savage. She's a controlled savage. She did it, right? They back then women weren't allowed. They said, no, you right. And she came in, and I got to work with Deanne. She actually came from where I started, and she got to as her career went up, she did the international program. She was going everywhere. I mean, Mongolia and all these places, and teaching them her skills, what to do to manage their garden. So pretty cool to see her career. And my old supervisor's still doing it. He's still part of the uh, Mexico International Program. Just to see that, right here was an idea. They made a plan, and it came to fruition. I mean, and it just started. It's like, hey, we'll just get a couple of guys coming over. We'll cross train them. They're going to work out with us. They're VIPs. They're going to do everything with us. And then that turned into every year. And now they're doing their own helicopter work. They're doing everything themselves. So we know it works. But yes, you could kind of pick what you want to do and go after it. I mean, don't let anyone tell you no or you can't. You just give them a smile, respectful smile. Don't be disrespectful. And you say, okay, and do it.
That was going to be, well, that's a first. Sorry, my last question, my next question, I think it's going to be my last one, is just, I think, for girls that are watching, is this something, I'm sure there are probably more men than women just from, historical gender imbalance, but like, it's cool to hear you talk about this female smoke jumper, and like, is this a field that women can get into as well?
Yes, by all means. And it's, when we give tours, people would say, is there girls or ladies in? And I said, well, we respectfully call everyone smoke jumpers, and I have no, right. They're just as, they'll pick you up, right. And there'll be guys come and say, she a smoke jumper? I said, yeah. And I'd watch the way you say that. She might come over here and drag you off. So yeah, they are not pushovers. Anyone that passes a smoke jumper program is a very accomplished, highly motivated, learns how to mitigate pain very well. They're professional pain management. At
Yeah.
some point in rookie training, it's not easy. It's not. And yes, still in my career, some of my rookie sister that I rookie trained with, and some Deanne Shulman, just amazing mentors. I mean, I look up to them. I do. I still talk to them once in a while, and they're just such huge mentors to me, right? You imagine, she came into this program, they didn't want her, and
Mm.
so many jumpers took her under the wing, and they pretty much protect and say, hey, there's right and wrong, and
Mhm.
she went through and she did it, and what a great career that she did, right? She made a difference in the fire service. I don't want to say the name, I'm not supposed to. In that agency, she came in and made a difference and inspired. Just think how many people she touched in the world with her international program. There's no words for it. I mean, literally, there's no words for it. She's changed things, and so is my other supervisor. And I tell folks, come in and make a difference. Don't just come to work.
Yeah.
Make a difference. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's the perfect note to end on. And I hope that we'll have lots of students who want to make a difference who will watch this and get into firefighting and submit great solutions to the challenge. This, just for folks watching, is going to be our last industry engagement for December. We'll be on a little bit of a hiatus until the second week of January, and then we'll be back with Tuesday, Thursday industry engagements. And just like this one, we'll be coming to you, giving you a chance to explore Washington industries and recording them so students can watch them in their courses. So Jason, thank you so much for the time. This was so great. It was wonderful to talk to you. And thanks for your service. This is awesome.
Thank you so much. And again, anyone listening, you can find me. My number's out there. You can even call me. People call and they say, "This is Jason. You answer the phone." So, well, who else is supposed to answer it? So you got questions, call me, text me, homing pigeon. I'm a little rusty on my Morse code, but you can send me Morse code if you like as well.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for your questions. And we'll be back in January. So look for this to be up soon. Bye.